I'm about to call on someone if someone doesn't step up.
Oh, yeah, do
Yeah,
it.
go, Jeff, go.
I could like just do this, right? And the whole gallery view. And
Oh my gosh.
Bonnie Joy Blanchard, you have to ask your question.
Yay.
Hi, I was actually typing a question, so that's hilarious.
There we go.
Hi, Jeff and Daniel. Really glad to have you here. This is not a very deep question. I've been to some of these, kind of marathon auditions where you just see person after person after person. So I just kind of want to know, I guess, your opinion and kind of what you like to see in a performer as far as what stands out to you and what makes you enjoy listening to a performer.
I'll go first, Daniel, since I'm the one who initiated. So when you talk about these, I know we have a blend of European and American based people here, I believe. But the phrase we use in the U.S., especially in reference to theater, we use the phrase cattle call auditions. Is that kind of what you're talking about? Cattle call auditions?
Yeah, exactly. The cattle calls. Yep.
Yeah, the cattle call specifically for managers, or are they general auditions? I'm just curious.
The general auditions, I guess, is more what I was asking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obviously, everyone is the beauty of being a manager is that you kind of have your own aesthetic for singers and what you look for. Some people even specialize in repertoire, which is much more a European thing, I would say, because we don't have the breadth of repertoire in the United States. We've just some weird numbers, and I don't know if these are accurate because these are about 4 years old. But when I started my business in 2016. I did some research and found that there's about 1,100 opera performances a year in North America that I believed were, in my mind, financially viable for running the kind of business I wanted to run. And that was North America. Over 200 of those 1,100 happened at the Metropolitan Opera all by itself. So, 18% of opera performances in North America happen in one house. On the flip side, Paris, Vienna, and Berlin pass North America alone. 3 cities outpace the entire North American continent. So that's why I say you can have specialization, and that goes more to the idea of managers' aesthetic. That's why North American managers tend to be a little bit more broad. We don't do that. We're not able to, especially in our home market. But to the answer about what do we look for in a singer. Very often I go into large auditions like that, and for me, they are typically in a young artist situation. So especially in the United States, when we do the summer festivals, Des Moines, Glimmerglass, Santa Fe, St. Louis are the big 4. It's looking at raw talent, just what speaks to me, and also, do I think that someone, I'm going to use the word genuine, and what I mean by that is, can I tell if I hear someone sing an aria and I know exactly what recording they've been listening to, that's not genuine. We want artists who have something to say. The beauty of opera is that it is the culmination of all the art forms: visual, oral, language, and you have everything there to put your own personal spin on it. And for those of you who are American based, and I won't get too much on my soapbox about American music education, I promise to avoid that because otherwise no one else will get to talk. But we've somehow sterilized singing. And I think what happens is we get into a point where you're educated in silos. You have your voice teacher to talk about technique. You have a coach to tell you one thing. You have a diction teacher. You have this, you have this, you have this. And somehow we get so stuck in trying to find all of those different individual things. And there's no coalescence around what you ultimately are, which is a performing communicator. And so for me, what I want when I hear someone sing, I want to be want to be communicated with. I want someone to be giving a performance. And I think every one of you at some point in your life and had a moment where you knew you had something special that you wanted to share. And so at some point, at least, and this happened to me when I sang, is that I lost what it was. Just okay, I'm from Texas, Norman's from North Carolina, so if we get going too long, you're not gonna be able to understand us talk with our accents. But what I would often say is, man, I just need you to sing. All right? I just need you to sing. And you can still do that as an opera singer. You can. And so that's the one thing, is when someone walks in a room and just sings, that's what I want. So there you go. That's my short version.
Then I guess it's my turn. No, I totally agree with most of what you said. I would like to add maybe that for me personally, I always feel a bit schizophrenic about that, because on one hand you have me as musicologist who's looking for, you know, someone who can understand the music, bring something to it. And on the other hand, there's the business side, I think, and those two don't necessarily overlap, because I mean, I think we all know that there are a lot of singers who might not be great singers and still make a great career, and there are also singers who are great singers and maybe don't make the biggest career. So I think there is always this balance between those two personas. So I personally try to really look, okay, is that on the level of quality that I would expect if I pay for an opera evening? But on the other hand, I also have to keep in mind, okay, is that something I can sell?
Yeah, and I would add one thing for me is a little bit of what we said about the musicology. There also needs to be a baseline. There needs to be a floor for your skills. And you know, Daniel and I are fortunate that we work with the top houses in the world. We're you know, and that's fun, and that's what we want to do. So you know, there has to be a floor for your skill set that's acceptable at that level. I think Midori, the famous Japanese violinist, had a saying one time that really encapsulated that idea for me, which is the notes on the page, the dynamics, the fingerings, all of that is a given. Music is what I do with that information. So your language, your knowledge, your character study, all of that skill set that Daniel just talked about, that's your baseline. None of that, and I know that sometimes we all go to performances and we get judgy and we're like, man, it's terrible, that person can't act, whatever. You know, and let's be honest, tenors get away with everything. But they do. It's not fair. Not always, but most of the time, tenors can get
Not everybody.
Not everybody. But
it's true. It's true.
Yeah, and let's be honest, there are different rules for different people, and that we just have to accept that. But for yourselves, know what the baseline is, and everything that makes you special is what happens after that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. That's awesome. All right, so Anne has the next question. Really, to
Those are
unmute
good
yourself
answers.
and ask your question, and whoever would like to pick up on that, maybe Daniel, you
Nice.
can start this time.
Okay. Yeah, so first of all, hi, I'm Anne-Sophie. And I would just like to say thank you, Jeffrey, for putting down that thing about like opera being like you have to copy everyone else, or like that you can't stand out or being your own specific way. That's something I've struggled a lot with, so thank you for bringing that up. My question, and now I feel like I've got a few questions, but I'll just pick one. So like I was in contact with this agent and I sent him some information, and then he said, yeah, it's great, your recordings are great quality, but I don't hire singers from hearing a recording. And is that a general thing among agents, that you don't listen specifically for recordings, or like you don't hire them until you see them in person?
Shall I start this time? Okay, I just go. Well, I think the whole story with the recordings is really difficult because it is really difficult to tell something from a recording. It is possible, don't misunderstand me, but it is really difficult. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of our colleagues probably do struggle to assess a singer just by hearing a recording. Personally, I also prefer hearing people live because it is something else. You can tell much more, not just like vocally, but also just like, let's say, the aura of a person by just like seeing them on stage or just like in person. So that's really something else. It is possible still to hear on a recording, okay, that is high quality singing, or that person gives me something exciting or something, but it is much more difficult, I would say.
Yeah, and for me, a recording can be a nice introduction, but I am going to want to hear the person live. Also, for me, again, going back to aesthetic, I think it's also interesting that a lot of managers, there's a certain personality to the people they work with, and I want to know the person as well as much. Actually, a lot of times, if there's someone I'm interested in, and I've heard them sing somewhere, or I've heard a recording, or they've won a competition or something like that, I very often I'd rather talk to you on the phone for an hour first to get to know you than have you come in and sing and then talk. Because then also when the person, let's be honest, when you walk into an audition, you're going to be nervous, right? If we've already had a 1 hour phone conversation, you're going to be less nervous when you walk in the room, and I'm going to get a truer sense of who you are. And so that's something I like to do. I will say that there are people that I have signed without hearing them, but they're also it's unique situations, people that have been more seasoned who want to change managers. And I know their careers, I know what they're doing, I know their schedules, and I've heard them at some point, but that's a different thing than what we're talking about. So it's not unusual, but it's pretty rare.
Just as a tagline to that, what do you think, guys? What do you think that like when you hear someone recording and then you go, okay, I want to hear this person live. What are the differences? Because now we obviously do live in such a world where it's so recording based and everybody is doing all this stuff based on these recordings. What are the differences that you find when you are listening to recording and how you hear somebody in a room?
Well, we can just take the example, when Daniel and I were going to work together. Mm-hmm. And so he heard some of my recordings on YouTube, but then obviously we had to get in the room.
Yeah.
And that was hopefully a pretty different situation than the YouTube recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just asked that as a tagline, just so that, we know that, how we sound in recording is not how a voice translates in the house or how the voice really translates in a room. And so what do you guys think about that as your experience with that? Just quickly. Sorry.
I would say that's a thing because, very, very often, I think it's easier for, let's say, more focused voices, or even smaller voices sometimes sound incredible on recordings. And it's always much more difficult to capture a big voice on recordings. And that's something that, you can hear a recording and it sounds unbelievable, like a huge sound and everything. And then in real, it's not that amazing. So that's something I always keep in mind.
I sound like a soubrette on most recordings. You just get the upper performance and Daniel's rolling his eyes. I'm serious. When I hear it, I'm like, oh my God. People are going to.
It is definitely a different experience on recording, but that's what I'm saying. I think it's really difficult to capture a big voice on a recording, much more than smaller voices or not necessarily smaller, but more focused voices. If you have a big voice, it's just there's no way to capture that.
Right, and I would say also if we talk about the physics of it, the overtones, especially of a larger voice, can just, the fact that you guys picked up that you just drank in unison, you guys have got to get some time apart. All right, the two of you, it's just freakish. It was like synchronized swimming, that was crazy. Anyway, sorry, I don't take it. This is what happens. Norman and Sue and I get around each other. We're just goofy. A lot of it's about the overtone and to be honest, a real high quality recording that's going to accurately reflect how you sing most of us don't have the budget to do that kind of stuff. And because, you can spend $10,000 on a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
yeah.
And, the equipment that the Metropolitan Opera and the Vienna State Opera and the Bayerische Staatsoper all use to do these very wonderful, high quality broadcasts, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment, highly trained people to mix the sound and adjust with it. And that's just not going to happen. It's just not real.
And even then it can be misleading. I'd say.
And it can be misleading as well. Yeah. So, and just a little weird story from my own singing career. This was before I even knew Norman. I was a young artist at a small summer festival in the US, and they were doing Bohème. We were in the rehearsal room, and I thought the Rodolfo had the ugliest voice I'd ever heard in my life. It was noisy. It had a lot of static in it. And I was like, I don't get it. He's getting paid to do this? We got into the theater, and I went out in the house and heard him sing his aria. Glorious. Glorious in the house. So,
yeah.
It's never.
Yeah. I mean, we train our voices so they project. And so, it's not going to sound the same. I hate singing in small rooms personally. Okay. Oh,
thanks.
Can we? Yes. Tyler is the next person to ask a question.
Yep.
Don't mute me. I'm trying to talk.
I'm not.
What are you doing?
I'm not doing anything.
See, we just came out of something, Jeff. Aren't you happy? All right. So Tyler, please feel free to ask your question to whomever you like, or both, or however you want to do that. I'm going to mute me now. Hi.
Sure. Hi.
He's back on mute.
There we go. Okay. Thank you for hosting this, first of all. And I wanted to ask, I guess for both of you, because you're both different people, what matters on the resume? Because I went to conservatory for 4 years, but then I decided to leave because it definitely was not the right situation for me. And I'm still continuing studying seriously. I took it seriously while I was there. I'm a chorister now. I'm 24. But, as far as roles, as far as education, what do you look for?
I'm happy to go first this time. For me, and I will answer, someone put it in the chat about whether you need to have a master's or a bachelor's degree or all that. I think that does give an indication of training. But also, I think, obviously if you've gone to Curtis or you've gone to the Juilliard School or you've done your master's at Yale or even undergrad at Oberlin or master's at Rice in the US, that's going to have some cachet with a manager and what their interest is in you. However, ultimately, it's what really matters is how you sing. And so what's on the resume that's going to be more interesting to me is, who's your voice teacher? Do I know them? What coaches have you worked with? What conductors have you worked with? And I'll just say this here, you mentioned you're a chorister. If you're a chorister and you've worked with a conductor, that doesn't belong in your resume. They need to know you as a soloist, not as a chorister. Coaches, conductors, directors. Those are the people who are going to know you the best, and they need to have worked with you in a principal role situation, and really be able to talk about you. And I think those are the most important things for me, and also just a sense of your repertoire as well. So, I mean, it can be just, very, very, a resume doesn't have to be a long, gigantic thing. It just needs to be an accurate representation of your experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess, I'm personally not really a resume guy. So if you sing well and I like that, I don't give a hoot about what stands in resume. On the other hand, I think it's interesting to see what repertoire you would associate yourself with. Concerning the whole school issue, I don't think that makes any difference. I mean, a lot of singers never actually studied singing. Waltraud Meyer never really went to university to study singing. So it doesn't really make a difference, I think, personally. It is interesting to see, once you already have a career, in which houses you've sung, what companies you've been with, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, if the result of the singing is fine, I'm not interested in the whole details.
Yeah, I think we've encountered both with our colleagues, and so some people have this amazing pedigree, other people don't. And at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that it's really about, can you do the job?
Yep.
And so, you know,
can you sing?
anyway, all right. So now we have Orlando. Please feel free to unmute yourself. Come on down. You're the next contestant on Aging Masterclass.
Hi, everybody. I just want to say thank you for having this talk. It's really cool. So I might as well start off by saying that I'm a baby. I'm 23, kind of similar to Tyler's age. I just graduated with my degree in vocal performance, so I'm really happy about that. And I just been trying to kind of navigate this new free world, do operatic stuff kind of thing. And I was just kind of wondering if a master's degree is a determining factor for agents. I know that some people can, like, you know, an example I can think of is like Nadine Sierra, that like she just had a career, boom, and got famous and stuff. And you know, I'm just curious, if a master's gives you like more points, or like has a more probable chance of you getting picked to have management. So thank you.
Well, I'll just start. No, I don't think so. I think in general, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I think in general in America, it's much more usual not to just do the master's degree and just get straight to like an opera studio or something. I think it always depends, because some voices just need more training. But if you're going out, if you're like soprano or something, you better get out there and get some jobs, because for certain voices it is important to get into the business really early, because the whole career is going to be much earlier. For let's say a dramatic soprano, it might be wiser to stay at university for as long as possible, get all the training you can get, and then try to get foot into the business and then be there when you're ready. So I think it always depends on what kind of voice you have.
Yeah, I agree. And it's again, going back to that skill set that we talked about at the beginning, is how refined are your skills? Where are you? You know, how prepared are you for the career? If you're going to go to graduate school, the whole purpose should be to enhance your skill set and build a stronger skill set, so that when you come out 2 years later, you know, then you are farther along than if you had just kept going. Because it gives you a protected environment in which to develop that skill set. But again, it depends on personality. To be completely honest, and I say this with the acknowledgement of the current state of the world, including the fact that I can't get on an airplane and fly to Europe right now, which drives me crazy. But you know, it's why I actually encourage a lot of young singers right now just to get over to Europe. And like, you know, traditionally in the United States, everyone has been saying, audition for the young artist programs, do these summer young artist festivals, do this. Well, with the rise of the open studios, specifically in German-speaking Europe, I'm telling Americans, like, go to Europe and audition for those opera studios, because it's a very different training than what you're going to get in the United States. And I think it's actually better suited for the long haul career, especially because you're also establishing your career in Europe. But that's a whole other different conversation. But in terms of a graduate degree, I think it's really about where's your skill set now and where can it be in 2 years.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Nice.
It's all about the skills, and that's something that I think we've tried to sort of pass that on to you guys with some of the materials that we prepare. Okay, Sarah, please feel free to ask your question.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I have actually a few questions, but I try to pick just one. Maybe I can ask one more later. So, do you think it's possible to jump from a choir singer to a soloist? And how would that be possible?
Yeah.
That's my question.
I just go. Yeah, why not? I mean, there is no. I don't see any limitations to that. I mean, if you can convince people with your voice while being a choir singer, why not? I don't think people would judge you because you're coming from a choir. Most singer students I know do sing in a choir while they're studying, so it's a totally normal thing.
Okay.
And then once you're ready, you just go.
Okay, cool. And maybe when you because I don't have actually really solo experience right now, because there was just no opportunity for me because I never studied solo singing. But I have a lot of stage experience and choir singing experience. So would you also hire someone like that who doesn't have solo experience but still have a lot of stage?
But I think the thing is, as I said before, I don't really, personally at least, I can't really tell about other people. But personally, I don't really care what the background is, as long as the result and the singing convinces me. And I know that is something I can sell. Yeah, that's all I need to know.
Okay.
But of course, I mean, it depends. I mean, other agents think differently. So
yeah,
it's a personal thing. Everybody has his own opinions. Because it's difficult to say in general, no?
Yes, yes it is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's very just okay. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with Daniel.
Okay, Ivy, please feel free to ask your question. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
I am Ivy. I just want to hear a bit about repertoire in management auditions. I think especially since a lot of us are young, that can be a little different when singing for managers versus like having rigid requirements on what you're supposed to sing in a young artist audition. So do you guys prefer to hear like a mix of standard rep as well as something that the artist thinks really shows off their voice, or do you only want to hear standard rep to see how you could use them? I'd just be interested to hear a bit about that.
You go first, Jeff.
All right, repertoire. No, I love that you mentioned the young artist requirements, because it's the one thing in our business that just drives me. Forget. I'm just gonna say. I mean, it drives me batshit crazy. It just, the idea that everyone has to be able to sing French, German, Italian, English, something after 1972 that was written by someone sitting at a desk. Just like, ugh. Anyway, sing what you sing best, and you also don't have to bring 5 arias. If you have 4 really great arias, bring it. That's what I want to hear. I also don't, maybe Daniel has a different opinion on this. You don't have to sing Mozart. It's okay. It's okay. You don't have
to. It really is.
What, do you agree, Daniel?
I agree, yes. You don't have to.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay to leave Mozart off the list. I know that's like, all the Americans are like, I don't understand. I've been told for 10 years I have to sing Mozart. No, you don't. No, you don't. One of my most successful clients is a coloratura soprano. I wouldn't propose her. The closest thing we've come is Queen of the Night, and we're just not even worried about it. And so bring what you sing well. Also, I want you to have something, going back to our previous thing about what stands out to people, I want you to have something to say about the character. So to be honest, I genuinely say this, if you haven't related to the character, I'm gonna know it. I'm gonna feel it. And it's like, one of my clients who sings really big repertoire, it was ironically Mozart, she was singing Dona Elvira. And I said, you don't like this woman, do you? She's like, no, I think she's awful. I said, then we're never gonna sing this again, because you don't look happy singing. So yeah, I think that's the big thing for me is you need to have something to say about the character and just sing what you want to sing. That's it.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And yeah,
nice.
It's just like, I don't know, I bring all specialized repertoire, that's fine, but I do it well. Yeah. And so that's the whole point. All right, Gabriel? Please
May I
feel.
just
Oh,
add
that's-
a little small thing, a little small thing. No, I mean the thing about like showing off the voice, that I think is really, it sounds good, but it's really dangerous, because I'd rather have you something that shows the voice but not show off, because that can always go right into the wrong direction. Also about the Mozart, yeah, I think what I want to see is that you know your voice and that you know what you can sing, and then maybe you bring something that is an view into, let's say, a few years in the future. But for me, it is important that I can tell, okay, this singer knows their voice, knows what they are capable of, and knows what to do with it. So it's not like I'm not a fan of like bringing, if you bring that and that aria, you will be hired. No, you have to know what you as a singer are going to bring and really convince with it.
I agree. And so whatever that is, just bring it. That's the whole situation. I see you guys writing. I've got you in the queue on Sophie and also Jenny. Now it's Gabriel's time to ask his question.
Hi. Okay, so I'm not really sure how this question is going to come out, but just bear with me. I'm just going to lay out my thoughts. I see so much talent that doesn't get the chance to be nurtured. And a lot of us on this call are actually at an advantage because we have access to people like Daniel and Jeffrey. But I think of these other singers, how can agents make themselves available so that these singers can have the resources to know that they can pursue a career in this industry? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Well, tell your friends about Living Opera and they could.
I think that's a bit of a difficult story, because I would say, I'm not sure if I'm right about this, but I would say that most agents probably don't want to don't want the singers to get the contact to them, because most of us are probably really busy with the singers we already have. But that sounds like a really bad aspect. What I mean is that I totally agree that there is so much talent which is not being found or whatever, but I think that is a part that is also caused by the singers themselves a lot of times, because I think Sula is telling that all the time anyway, that you have to network as well. It's not ultimately good singing is fine, but if no one knows that you're good singing really well, it won't help you. So the whole networking thing became really important, I would say, over the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years probably, and with the whole social media thing as well. It is just really important to be connected so that people know you, because even if they heard you once in an audition, but if you did not make a lasting impression, you don't really connect with people on a regular basis, they will simply not think of you.
Yeah, and again, this is to Daniel's point about networking. If you are 1 degree of separation or even 2 degrees of separation away from an agent, a lot of agents, a lot of my colleagues, and I'll say specifically to North America, because I don't know if this is something that happens in Europe, we do consultations. We don't advertise that we do consultations because, to Daniel's point, it's time. I could probably sit and do consultations all day long. My former boss, Matthew Epstein, retired and has made an entire living doing consultations. He also charges a lot of money for them, but but it's so we're very willing to do that. Now, I think in terms of nurturing young singers as managers, that is, a lot of us try and do that through relationships we have with companies. and I would say also specifically young artist programs. And if we know someone is talented, we'll pick up the phone and call them. Actually, again, in the small world of how this works, my last roommate when I lived in Houston, Texas, was Brian Specht, who is the head of the Houston Grand Opera Studio. So I have a very, very strong connection to Houston Grand Opera.
H-Town.
Are you in Houston, Gabriel?
Yes, sir.
Very nice.
Who is your other roommate?
And so is Tyler.
Who is your other roommate?
Norman and I were only roommates for one summer. That's it. One summer. Although Norman took over my room when I moved to New York, and he moved in with Brian. So, yeah. So I think it's about the networking. And if I hear a young singer, I can then email Brian and say, hey, you should take a listen. So that's one way that we nurture young singers, because there is the one thing I also want to remind people of is that agents are for-profit entities, and especially in North America, where we grew up in a not-for-profit world where everyone loves each other and we do it because we love the art form. I love the art form too, but I also like money, and I get to make money doing this. And so if I spend 6 years developing someone, that's my time has a value. It has an intrinsic value. And if I spend 6 years not making money working with someone, I have to weigh that balance. There's a balancing act there. And I don't want to sound cold and callous, but I know Norman and Sula talk about how you have to treat your career like a business. And so there is, ROI, return on investment. So, when I'm working with a young person, I'm not making a lot of money at the beginning, but I'm hoping that the time I'm investing is going to pay off in 5, 6, 10 years. So if that starts even younger, that can be hard. But I feel like I'm now talking in circles, so I'm just going to wrap up so we can move on to another question.
That principle, though, it applies to a singer too.
Yeah.
Your time, your work investment that you put into the business and into you and into your voice, it's the same principle, is that you expect a return on that investment. Mm-hmm. And so that is a consistent principle. We are in the arts, as we've said before, but all of those things apply because your time is of value, like their time is of value. So that all kind of works together.
Definitely.
So.
Okay, Maya, you're the next question person. Go ahead.
Okay, hi everybody, and thanks for doing this. So my question is, what qualities should a good agent have? How to recognize that, and what qualities should a singer look into?
She put you on the spot.
Well, that's actually, I think, a really, really, really difficult question, because I think there is not like one way, because certain agents bring something else maybe, and then you have someone who brings another quality and might not be very good in something else. I think it is really important that you can tell that the agent really has an understanding for music. That is really important, I think, because that's just the basis. Because if you have someone who has no idea what your voice can do and what you're capable to sing and what not, it won't be really helpful. On the other hand, of course, we all need like business training, and that is really important as well. And all that networking thing. I know a lot of my colleagues who are like absolute zeros in music, but they are just incredible networkers, and it still works. It's you just like, there's a lot of different skills you need, but if you're weak on one spot, you might have a strength in another one. So it's difficult to say, I suppose.
The only thing I would add on to that is when you look at managers, and this is, again, this is probably a whole other conversation, but you need to know what you want for yourself in your career. What is going to be the definition of success for you? One of the best tenor voices I've ever heard, who actually lives in Houston, he is very happy being a choral soloist at a big church, singing in chamber choirs, and being in the Houston Grand Opera Chorus. It's a great voice, but you know what? That was the definition of success for him, and he was very happy, and that's fantastic. If your dream is to sing at the Metropolitan Opera and Covent Garden and Deutsche Oper Berlin, then you have a different goal. And so in the same way that there are different careers, there are different managers who work in different spaces. So when you're looking at managers, look at their rosters and see where their singers are performing, because that's going to tell you a lot about their network, where they tend to focus, and dare I say, their own ambition for themselves. And that's not to say that their ambition is wrong. That's not what I mean at all. It's just saying that is where they choose to spend their time and energy. And so I think that's an important thing when looking and talking to managers and agents.
I love that answer so much. It's such a great answer,
Nice
because
to
they're
know.
also like, the thing, you have to be able to self-assess. And so, you know, one singer might think, oh, well, I could definitely sing at that world like A++ level, but it's obvious to everybody else, like, well, you probably can't do that for whatever reason. And it's not always because of the voice. You know, sometimes it's a personality issue or a mobility issue, like in terms of maybe you can't travel as easily as I don't know. There's just lots of different factors as to why you might not reach certain levels. And so it is important to, like, as Jeff just said, look on the roster, say, oh, do I belong in the, like, okay, Jeff, I don't know what your roster is doing right now, but like on the one that Norman and I are on with Daniel, like, do I belong in the same roster as Marina Rebecca and Larry Brownlee and Levy, who's singing all over the world? Like, is that where I should try and aim and start right now? Or should, yeah, I sorry, because I just haven't looked at your list for a while, because like we're friends. And so yeah, I know. And the contacts and all of that. So it's also like, I remember my first manager actually had some artists like that, but he also had the ability to help me. Well, I actually know, because I ended up just singing in bigger places. But anyway, like we tried to do young artist studio and stuff like that. So it is important to self-assess, and I'll just leave it there. Now it's Victoria.
Hi, thank you so much for answering our questions. I wrote mine down on the side, so I'm going to read it so I don't get too rambly. So I wanted to talk about sopranos in particular. Since there are so many of us, how do you choose? I do hate to go there, but how important are looks in comparison to voice and acting? How about age? I've heard one too many times that I am excellent, but sopranos have to be perfect. And I even just heard it from a coach the other day. And I should clarify, I mean looks in terms of like, do I have to look like a model, but also like in terms of like stature and like the voice matching the way a person looks, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I just go. Well, I mean, I don't think anyone could deny that the looks are getting more important. I mean, I think someone like, let's say, Montserrat Caballé would probably not make that much of a career nowadays anymore, just because she was a big lady. That's still does not mean that you have to look like a model. I mean, there are still so many singers who might not look like, I don't know, Michelle Pfeiffer or something, and still make a career. Ultimately, I think if you have a voice that impresses people, the looks don't matter. I could give you so many examples for this, but I think it's rude to do. Whatever. No, but the thing is, for the soprano question, if I understood you right, ultimately, I can just like go back to what I already said. If I have the feeling you understand your voice and you know what kind of voice it is and what you can do with it, I'm just going with it. Of course, from the business side, I mean, if you have, let's say on your roster, you have like, I don't know, four Traviatas, and you have someone who's a really good Traviata, you might think, okay, do I really need another one for that kind of repertoire? Because at the end of the day, you have to sell them and keep their calendars full. So yeah, I think that, I hope that was clear. Was it?
Yeah, and to his point, I think it's a reality. It's happening. And especially in places where stage directors who have a lot more power than they did 30, 40 years ago are coming from the theater world, from Broadway and West End, from film, they're going to have certain demands for the way people look. And just an example, I won't get into too much detail, but I'll just say the director was Ivo van Hove, was doing a production at the Metropolitan, and we were talking with them about one of our singers, and we literally had to come up with 5 to 8 photographs to make sure that the singer was what was in his mind. And it wasn't necessarily a body shape or a physical, it wasn't a physical thing, but it was he had an image in his head of the character. You know, I don't think if you're 5'2", you're going to get hired to sing Octavian. You know, and if you're 6 foot tall, you're probably not going to get hired to sing Susanna. So there's also, if you're 6 foot tall and a soprano, you're probably not singing soubrette repertoire. That's just the, you know, the nature of physicality. But it does play a role. We have to be honest about it. It does. It really does. So, you know, the best thing you can do is, again, it's coming back to what I said earlier about picking the right repertoire for yourself has a lot of different levels to it. So, and I think we just have to be honest about that.
Okay, there's a lot to say about that topic, and Norman, I've experienced some pretty weird things also in this industry. I'm not going to get into that because this is going to be on YouTube afterwards. So, Chris, please ask your question.
Hi there. I'm so excited to have you guys here, and thank you, Sula and Norman, for hosting this masterclass. You two talked a lot about finding your genuine voice, having something to say, and finding a singer that really knows their voice. But I want to know how much preference or bias is there for vocal timbre when casting or signing on a singer, and what your general thoughts are on timbre.
If it's beautiful, I like it. I don't know. This is just as simple. It's like, you know, I actually generally have a gut reaction to the sound of a singer's voice. It hits me here, and it's going to happen pretty quick. So that's the simplest answer.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that.
That's good.
I agree.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Okay. That was easy. Thank you, Chris. All right. I have, I guess I have Anne-Sophie again. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's go. So I'm sort of transitioning into contralto, and sorry, this is a question about myself, but I find myself like in a hard situation of approaching agents because I'm like, what could they even hire me for? Because like Mozart is kind of off the topic, and like, yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So you're transitioning to contralto.
Yeah, like I don't feel comfortable singing entirely mezzo rep because like the lower part of my voice is just like way more what would you say, powerful, and that's what I feel I can really do something with. So yeah, I have a hard time approaching agents because I'm like, what could they even hire me for? Like what good would I be in their roster, if that makes sense?
Well, I think in concerning the whole contralto thing, it's a bit difficult because people nowadays are not daring to call themselves contralto anymore because usually everyone calls themselves a mezzo because they just see, okay, that then you have much more possibility, which I think is a pity because if you're really a good contralto, that opens so much door because it's a rare thing. So if the agent is smart and he likes your voice, he will just like do something with it.
Okay.
My 2 cents is that I think Anne-Sophie is a true contralto. Just my 2 cents. That's all.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
and I think the same goes for low male voices for me in determining bass, baritone, and I'll just say bass and bass baritone a little bit, because it's very often the way I approach, we inherently compare other people, right? We compare singers to each other. If I'm going to call you a contralto, a casting director is going to immediately think of the people he thinks of as he or she thinks of as contralti, and say, okay, do you sound like this? Do you sound like, the only one I can think of off the top of my head is an American, Meredith Arwady, for those of you that may know her, or Stephanie Blythe. But I think Stephanie even refers to herself as a mezzo, not a contralto. So, but it's like, when you say contralto, it is a very narrow repertoire, and that's okay.
Maybe you could add low mezzo. And that's what the thing is. I would always like differ, because mezzo is not necessarily mezzo. I mean, there are high mezzo, there are low mezzo. So if you want to do the in between thing, you can call yourself a low mezzo.
Awesome, great.
And let's also remember that you don't need like 20 engagements per calendar year to have a full calendar. In fact, you probably can't unless you're just crazy. So, if you have a specialized repertoire and you have, 3 nice jobs per year, that's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you want a couple more, but that is just perfectly fine. So I trust that repertoire is produced at least that much per year. Okay, Jenny, please ask your question.
So, hi, Jeffrey, Daniel. Thank you so much, Sula and Norm, for, can you hear me all? Everything? Okay, good. I have a question about resume gaps. Like when you're taking some time off, maybe you haven't done something in a while, something big, like a on-stage, fully staged performance. How do you look at that in terms of the resume, or is it just you rely more on recordings or word of mouth or what's coming up next? How would you, position yourself as a singer when you're approaching agents in that way? Does that make sense?
For me, if there is a what's coming up next, that's going to be the most important thing.
As I said before, like resume, like what is in the past is only slightly interesting to me. If I like the voice, and then if like maybe colleagues said, okay, this is something interesting, that weighs much more than the actual resume to me.
And to add on that, does it matter if it's like a paid to sing program or if it's actually a paid gig? Do you look at that at all, or is that not something you?
Well, it doesn't usually say in a resume if it's paid or not, does it?
True,
Yeah.
but some of the organizations might be, well-known paid to sing programs, especially in Europe.
It just depends, and it maybe depends on if there's someone there who I know who I can call. And that goes back to if you sang Queen of the Night somewhere and I know someone I can ask about it, that's what matters.
Great. Okay, Christine, you said you had a question.
Oh, hi. I'm sorry. So I was going to tack on to Ivy's question about repertoire. So how much of your repertoire needs to be roles that you're currently singing, could be hired for today, versus future roles when you go to sing for an agent? Do you want to hear 5 arias that are hireable roles out of the gate, or is that just something you discuss once you get on with an agent? Can you hear me?
Yeah. I mean, for me, going back to what I said earlier, it's just I want to hear what you do really well right now.
Okay.
I think the best people in our field know what the future could potentially be. No one knows exactly. We can all imagine it. But I a lot of it is, and especially what I think is going to be interesting coming out of the current status of the world is planning periods are going to get shorter. Things are getting moved. Things are getting canceled. People are, we're sure Daniel and I could tell some interesting stories from the past couple months of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And
Better not.
oh my God.
I
Sorry,
have a
guys.
question pertaining to that, by the way, Jeff. Like, how difficult is it going to be for foreign artists to get visas, like in this coming season? Well, I guess a lot of stuff's canceled in the States, but like I heard there's going to be a huge backlog for all of that.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about, I think we've got two problems. I'll try to be concise. I think it's going to be hard to get visas for people coming to the United States from Europe because the way that the government is dealing with the lockdown is people are working from home as much as possible for workplace safety. And I'm not sure that people are allowed to process visas at home. So I don't know how much visa processing is going on in the actual offices. I know there's a huge backlog, obviously, in the current administration. We won't dive into politics, but with the recent cancellation of processing of H-1 visas, does that mean O-1s are getting processed? We don't know.
Hers did.
Yay! Good.
She got it yesterday.
Oh, shoot! Okay, sorry.
So there we go. But how long ago did you apply? 6 months?
I asked for an extension
Yeah.
for my Houston Grand Opera visa.
Okay, so that's only been a couple months. That's actually good. So that the processing the visas, but and it just depends on which one you get, you know. And what I mean by that is the person who's reviewing the application. You know, the other problem then is, you know, depending on the election in the United States, the political turmoil between the EU and the United States going the other direction. Who knows when Americans will be allowed back in Europe? I don't know. And also depending on, there's so much unknown about that. That's really, really difficult. What I will say is that in the United States, American opera companies are openly talking about identifying local talent in their market so that they don't have to worry about bringing people in from the outside. And then there are other companies that are taking the different approach, which in terms of quarantine and creating cohorts and bubbles and things like that are saying, we want to bring in everyone. That way we can put them in an apartment and control them. So there's a little bit of a different approach. So anyway, and then in Europe, I'm sure Daniel is experiencing this as well. If you are on a salaried ensemble contract, you're working more than ever because they have that control and they're trying to save money by not paying guest fees. So it's a weird thing.
We're in a weird moment, that's for sure. Okay, Rachel, you're next, and then Tara.
Okay, hello. I have a question about how singers should best approach agents, whether that's through email contacts, networking, or inviting them to performances. What do you find, what works best for you? What do you like?
Difficult, very difficult question, I think, because I think that just like writing and maybe inviting someone over to a performance is not gonna work most of the time, I suppose. Unless I have heard the name already circling before and maybe I have heard you before or something. Yeah, it is, I think, really difficult to catch an agent's attention and then just like get them to be interested. But once they are, I guess that's the point. But I think it is. I can't really. I don't know if there is a way to say how to do it. But I mean, we've talked about this before. I think word of mouth and then really maybe recordings that get the interest going are helping. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, I think the networking aspect is probably the most important for me because if you want to invite me to a performance, that's great. Again, we spend a lot of our time in planes, trains, and theater seats, and you know, so if you want to invite me to a performance, that's great. But if you're able to say this person can also speak on my behalf, that's going to go a long way.
Go ahead, Norman.
No, good.
Well, I was just going to say, I have found personal connections is always the most effective. Always. Okay. We have about 2 minutes left in the original time. Jeff said he'd be willing to tack on an extra 10 minutes to accommodate all the questions. If Daniel, if you're happy with that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tara, you're next. And then I've got Bonnie, Ivy, and Sarah in the queue. But I would like to invite anybody who hasn't asked a question to please go ahead, because this is your time to really ask that question. You have the chance right now. So please go ahead, Tara.
Hi, everybody. I'm just curious, how often are managers involved in their clients' vocal technique and vocal progress? For example, do you attend voice lessons and that kind of thing?
I did, but I don't think that's an agent's job, if you ask me. I mean, I do. I just out of interest, and yeah.
Yeah, sure. I get a little more involved than some because of my background and my training, but I also I also happen to have a lot of singers on my roster who studied with my voice teacher, which is the teacher with Norman and I studied with in grad school. And so I'm a little more involved in that I have relationships with the teachers. So I will speak to the teachers. But what I try and do in that situation is say, this is what I hear. This is what I hear going on in the house. This is my reaction. You need to take that information to your teacher, or I take the information to the teacher. And then it's your job to figure that out. So that's how I try and take it, because I haven't studied that in a long time. And so, yeah, it's best that I stay away from it, but I am comfortable dipping my toe in for a very specific purpose.
I think both of you guys have a great approach. And I mean, Daniel has attended my coaching before, but also because he likes the music and it's fun. He's like, oh, you're gonna sing Zappa? Oh, let's listen to that. So, okay.
And also, just want to, and please, if I'm wrong, please tell me. But also, I mean, you guys have to be able to monitor vocal development, not just for the present time, but for where the career's going. So that is based on where is this person's career going, not just necessarily on, oh, well, they sound nice or they don't sound nice. There's a reason they have, that is part of, would you say, I would think. But anyway, sorry.
Okay, I have Bonnie, Ivy, Sarah, and then Clara has just asked a question because her audio and video isn't working. Do you appreciate singers showing up with rare, unknown, weird repertoire, or does it make the auditioning process less effective for you? I'd like to throw in on that for a second, and then if you guys have anything to add to it. I think there's nothing wrong with bringing in a rarity, but I think you do have to remember, and we've talked about this before, that the most effective way to be hired is to sing repertoire, especially if you're trying to break into the industry, is to sing repertoire that is produced more often. But if you are really excellent, like I bring the Kaiserin from Die Frau Schatten because I just can freakishly sing that aria well all the time. Always. I don't know why. And actually I find other music more stressful because I think I'm just strange. So, there's nothing wrong with bringing a rarity, but you do have to be able to back it up and say, well, I also brought, in my case, like Elsa and Chrysotemis or whatever, because that is more produced, because then your agent has an easier time selling. Because, if they say, oh, well, yeah, like I have no experience singing that really odd role and never produced, and they're like, well, I can't make any money off of that. Like, I need to be able to know, this at the end of the day. I mean, Daniel and Jeff both mentioned this is a collaborative work. But there's also the selling aspect that they have to be able to earn a living. And so is there anything, I hope that I'm answering that well for you too. If there's anything you'd like to tack onto that, just for the matter of time.
No, that's pretty much it, I'd say. I mean, the thing is, if you have a piece that is like maybe a weird piece, but you totally nail it, yeah. Because if then people are like, wow, this is like really interesting. I like the voice, I like the person, or whatever. That helps. But as Sula said, if it's ultimately a piece that will not be produced, it might be difficult. So unless you're sure that you totally nail it, I would maybe just stick with more normal repertoire, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Eva, sorry, I'm just trying to get the people who haven't asked any questions yet, and then I'm going to get to you guys who have your repeat questions. Eva says, thanks for your time. I can't turn on my audio and video because I'm at work. That's totally fine. Don't worry about that. I'd like to ask a question. I started classical singing quite late. I'm going to finish my bachelor's at 27. I'm 25 now. I'm a soprano, not dramatic. So for me, it'd be better to, would it be better to just get out and not do a master's if I understood correctly? I have to add that I don't look 25. I look more young, like 19 or 20. Does that matter? Okay. Do you have anything to add to that? I feel like we've covered some of that, but go ahead.
I'll just reiterate, if you have the skill set to go out and start a career, go start a career.
Amen.
Some to wrap up out of that. Let's just
That's a good summary.
Go right there. All right. So Bonnie.
I'm still laughing at the amen. That was awesome. Okay, hello again. I'm Bonnie Joy. And my question, I think, will apply to everyone here who is a multifaceted artist with a lot of different skills that Sula and Norman encourage us, to cultivate with our singing career. So my question is, would you be interested in partnering with a singer who would bring other things to the table, i.e. Kind of organizing recitals, virtual recitals, or advertisements within the studio, or even social media marketing, etc., or promotion for the arts? Would you be interested in that, or is that kind of something you already hire people for in your studio?
Okay, I have to say something.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I have to say something. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
Guys, and we've said this before, singers and agents have a collaboration. An agent does not have a job to hire you for. They don't hire you. You are an independent contractor, and they are somebody who helps facilitate you getting an independent contract. So I just want to break that mentality off of you guys, because Daniel and I work together, but he also works for me technically. And when I get paid, he gets paid. Right. And so that's how it is.
It's like always, it's a dual thing.
Yeah. But it's like a collaboration. And I just wanted to say that really quick. Please go ahead and answer.
What was the question?
I can jump on it, Daniel, if you want. I think because what we do is such a specialized thing, I actually have colleagues in the United States who have employees who are still performing. And I actually find that they struggle with that sometimes. So if you're talking about it as bringing in, because we generally hire people to do exactly what you said. And I'm going to look for people who specialize in those things. Now, if you are, I will say the one thing that's really important, and we really don't have time to go into it as deep as we could. So if we wanted to do another time to talk about it, from my perspective, is the social media thing. If you have a social media presence, if you are an influencer, now that we have that word in our lexicon, that is interesting. I won't lie, that is. And the example I will give is that one of my clients made her Houston Grand Opera debut last year, and she was doing an Instagram takeover. And I've been trying to get this summer festival to hire her. I knew the director was interested, everybody was interested. And I sent a note to the general director and I said, you need to go on Instagram and watch what she's doing. It's hilarious. I got a contract offer the next morning.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And Sula's absolutely right. Yes, people are looking at social media numbers, not only in Broadway, but also in film and television. And I think we're not far away from it in opera, especially given what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Ivy, please go ahead, girl.
Okay, so this actually sort of has to do with what Sula was talking about just a second ago in another way. So I thought you guys would have good insight, since you are the one shopping singers basically to companies, should, in essence, wording and all that. But so with COVID and things being canceled, do you think companies will want to see, as long as it's notated properly, but do you think companies will want to see if you had something upcoming that was canceled due to COVID, as long as it's marked on your resume?
Yes. I mean, I will say my company, my colleagues and I have had internal conversations about how to handle this. And what we are going to do The most difficult one is one of my tenors was scheduled for his European debut, Lyric Opera Chicago debut, and Metropolitan Opera debut, and he lost all three due to COVID cancellations. And it's the most gut-wrenching part for me is that career momentum that has been just had the brakes slammed on. I guarantee you with some of our artists, you are going to see COVID-19 cancellations in their bios on our website. I'm not going to put it in program bios. I'm going to put it in bios and information that I give to companies to hire them. But for our more seasoned veterans who already have established careers, we're probably not going to include it.
Yeah, I mean, we had the same discussion with our with biographies mainly, and we decided to leave those things out. And then if you send someone a biography, just like add it into the mail so that it is not totally lost. Because of course, if it was an important debut, as he said, it is really, depressing.
Yeah, but if you're talking about on a resume for a young singer applying to young artist programs, studio programs, things like that, include it 100%.
I agree. All right, so Sarah, please go ahead, and then we're going to wrap up.
So I have a question about what do you think is the right time to seek out for an agent?
I love this question.
The cheesy saying, and I want to take just 1 second to clarify the difference between a manager and an agent. And a manager, which typically has been a US and UK based philosophy, it's not that way anymore, but it typically has been that way. But the idea is that for a manager is interested in a very broad interest in your career in terms of development, working with you, and thinking long-term goals. An agent very often, and this is more the old Central European system, was you just had someone that got you gigs. And it wasn't, they weren't concerned about your career development. And even as recently as when I first started at Columbia Artists, we had a client who had 6 different agents, depending on territory. And that still happens to a certain extent. It's a lot rarer today because everyone acts as a manager. So that's why I say it's a little bit different. But it's important with what I'm about to say, which is what I was taught and still believe is you don't need a manager until you have something to manage. And so if you're not working, there's no magical door that, and I would say this is kind of how we approach it. If you already have jobs and you're already working and working at a level that makes sense with our company, that's going to be interesting. If you think I don't have any jobs, I need a manager to get me jobs, you actually don't need a manager. At least that, and unless you happen to sing the Kaiserin, that's a different conversation. But most most people don't. That's kind of a rarity. But anyway, that's my philosophy on it.
Okay, thank you.
I sort of agree. Yeah, that's.
Okay, well, guys, we're done. Thank you for going over time, Jeff and Daniel. Really, really, really appreciate it. And just that you guys be willing to talk to us and educate us. And I'm going to stop the recording. Bye, YouTube. Stop.